Very much. My name is Dukas, and I'm really happy to be here. I thank the organizers for choosing me to present as a perspective from a grant holder. It's my pleasure, it's my responsibility, and it's my honor. So I have decided to distribute this presentation in three parts based on sort of questions that I was given in advance. So the decision, the grant application itself, and then the interview. So this is my timeline as I have been introduced. The little detail that is missing, I'm coming from Lithuania and I'm not a Belgian, but I have integrated this research system during my PhD. And then after 4 years of postdoc after my PhD, I came back as an associate professor. And then the first question was, of course, why ERC and when? So, of course, as a researcher in life sciences, ERC is outstanding and probably unique in terms of its power. As you may know, research, especially in life sciences, is very costly and needs a lot of human power, human resources. And it's a unique grant which allows you to actually form a team of 2, 3, or sometimes 4 researchers to advance your project. It's probably outstanding in terms of its importance as well, as it brings you into the network and into the visibility as the researcher. So, of course, it's an opportunity not to miss. Now, in terms of timing, it was my first year after being recruited as associate professor at the University of Brussels that I have decided to apply for ERC Starting Grant. Why then? Well, I was eligible. I had, as I understand it, sufficient enough CV, although, let's say, you don't have to have very big publications, but I had solid publications during my PhD and during my postdoc as a first author. I had also a publication as a last author, which was on its way. And I have estimated also the time frame. So as it was mentioned, mind the gap. So I was at the time 4 years post PhD, which meant that if I have a bad evaluation, I can take a gap and I can still be eligible for ERC Starting Grant. So I decided to write my first project. And that first project, so maybe I forgot to mention, I'm a microbiologist and I've done most of my career on bacterial toxins, on the mechanisms of their activity and of their secretion pathways. And I have wrote my first ERC grant on a new, poorly explored, but actually very relevant and very abundant family of bacteria called Chrysiobacteria. And basically my idea was to understand how this poorly explored bacterium, which is very present, can have very many different phases, meaning that there are a lot of species described, and some of them are good guys and some of them are bad guys. And I wanted to understand what are these factors, molecular determinants, which define how the species will orient itself. It was a good probably idea because I have moved away from my subject and my model bacterium in terms of PhD and postdoc. It was new, but it was still in my competence zone. But I had little preliminary data, although I could show that I have, let's say, methodological skills and tools, at least a minimal set of tools to perform this research. And then the return from the panel was both at the same time. Some of the reviewers were saying it was too broad because I wanted to know everything about this bacterium, but it was also referred to as too niche because maybe I didn't convince that this bacterium was actually worth investigating. And if I can generalize it, my project, now that I look back, I think was looking too much of a fishing expedition. So what happened then? So I took the gap. And then during that gap, I was awarded FNRS grant. So I was working on one family of toxins in this bacteria, and I found it, and I made it a discovery, a surprising discovery. I found an object which is synthesized by this bacterium, and it's very flabbergasting. With this finding, I have asked for a credit of research and had a preliminary data. Between this time, also managed to get a WellBio grant. So basically, I was moving forward with my research. And then in the next call, I came back with the project, with my discovery, and that was a gigantic intracellular structure within these bacteria, which looks a bit like a toilet paper roll. And this structure, I could find that it protects bacteria from being eaten. And that was at the same time novel and at the same time extraordinary because it's a unique structure in terms of its size. And also it's something which has been discovered in 1950s, and there's only about 30 to 50 research articles on this structure, so it was kind of forgotten. But then my model, I could show that we have tools and skills to actually study and bring forward this question and to actually find all of the mechanistic and biological relevance of this structure. And I had more than a year of a preliminary data. And that made the whole difference because I've also established my team and I could gain some experience. I could show that I am capable of managing grants because I've received some of them and I've presented preliminary results emerging from these grants. And actually, what made the biggest difference, it was no longer a fishing expedition. It was a very, very well formulated idea, also with all of its relevance and with all of these, security measures that it will be doable. So basically, when we move now to the second part of my presentation, the actual application, let's also divide it in several parts. So actually the project content, it was already mentioned a lot by Valeria, I think, that the idea has to be clear. So if you decide to write an ERC and then you walk in the department and you meet your colleague and you say, I'm going to write an ERC grant, and the colleague is going to ask you, what is it about? And you actually have to be able to come back in 2 sentences about your idea. And you have to take the time to crystallize this idea. It has to be clear, it has to be novel, and it has to be important. And you have to think of it also as the ERC is public money. It's our money, it's our public money, and it's an investment. It's an investment to you, to your research. So it has to be feasible and it has to be balanced. If your research project might fail within first attempts, couple of months, you don't have a crucial result to move forward, it's a very bad investment because the whole research plan might fail. So in a sense, you have to construct a research project which is solid and it's measured and it's balanced. And also, of course, you have to think of what will be the outcome. So what will be the achievements from your project? So what will be these so-called milestones? Now, about the project writing itself, of course, you need to make a good choice about the panel. It was addressed by Valeria. I'm providing a few phrases from my colleagues when I was writing a grant, and I'm sure Ines is going to say it's totally untrue that you shouldn't go for LS1 because it's dedicated to the Oxford guys. But let's say LS1 is a panel which is basic molecular and structural biology, which I would also fit. But there's so many things that can fit in this panel, and it kind of recruits all of these very ambitious projects. And I think it's very difficult to get it there, even if my methods are mostly the methods of LS1. I chose to go to a panel which is more related to my question and to the settings of my question. In terms of microbiologists, for example, you sometimes have a choice. If you are molecular, you fit to the LS1. If you have medical aspects, you might fit to something which is more infectious biology, immunology, and you can also fit to evolution, environment. In my case, because I'm studying an environmental bacteria, and my choice was to go the environment and evolution. Now, in terms of the balance of what you write, I think that this was also addressed. B1 has to be something which conveys your idea and your message. Of course, you have to prove that you will be capable of doing it, but you don't have to explain methodological details in it, and it will be done in the B2. But I think that the importance of B1 is to find the right balance. It's maybe even more difficult to write the B1, which is a shorter and more compact version, than a B2. It depends. A lot of my colleagues started from B2 and then reduced it to B1. Others like to put it in terms of B1 and then expand it and explain their ideas in B2. I was working on both of these documents at the same time. Now, of course, the most important thing that you have to take into account is the time management. So a lot of my colleagues said that they have really barricaded themselves at home for 2 months to write the project. To me, I have started writing it in a sort of fragmented way in my time schedule, maybe since for 3 months, and then the closer it was to the deadline, the more time I was dedicating to the ERC. And for last week, I was really working only on polishing, but already a written version. Why? Because you have to take into account that it's actually a very large document, and just to read through all of your document, to polish it, to polish the phrases, to see if you have provided all of the information, if all of the formatting is correct. It takes about half a day to read through your whole document. So you have to be aware of the time investment and whether you will be able to commit to writing a grant. And maybe if you can't, maybe you shouldn't do it, because you might be just punished for 1 or 2 years and banned for not being able to reapply, because you will get B or C. And then, of course, it was also mentioned, the most important thing I would say is help. So if you have decided that you want to write an ERC, contact your university as soon as possible, because it is the university that will provide a lot of these questions, that answer a lot of these questions that were asked. For example, how many personnel I can hire. It depends on the salaries of people actually. So it's your institution that will tell you, are you eligible? How can you balance your budget, and will provide you some help in terms of panels and some examples. And of course, discuss with your peers, discuss with people that have written a project, and look for examples. I think that is the best way to do it. But when I looked at many examples of the ERC project, I also find that they were kind of different. So don't be ashamed to make it your project and to have your own take on it. And then, of course, the last step, if you manage to get to that step, this is really great. It's interview. So in terms of a presentation, keep uniform style. Some of my colleagues from other universities have told me that their university have paid a company to redraw the slides. But if you are you have good skills at design, I'm designing my own slides, and I didn't need it, but I was polishing them all the time. And for example, one of these polishing steps was to reduce the text. Every time I was looking through my presentation, and every time I was training, I was reducing the amount of text. I was reworking it, making it more clear, and basically being able to convey the message as clean as possible and as in short time as possible, to be able to present it at the right tempo, have the time to breathe. And of course, well, try to catch their attention, because these people have seen all kinds of presentation. In terms of my presentation, I have, of course, nice images, because it's cell biology, even if it's in the context of bacteria. These images are actually my object, that roll-like structure which protects bacteria from being eaten. That was my opening slide, and my opening line was actually true. I said that when I have first looked at my cells under the microscope and I saw this object, I thought this is an artifact. but it turned out not to be an artifact. And this is this funny story which tells your courage actually to take on a very bold project, a very bold finding, and to transform it into a project. Of course, do as many mock interviews as possible. But my choice was also to do mock interviews with the people that I know and that have received ERC starting or consolidator grants or are really advanced researchers in the field. I didn't do it with my students, for example, because everybody will have comments. Everybody will tell you this is good in the presentation, this is bad. So you have to choose whom you would want to listen, and maybe the best choice is to listen to be listened by the people that have actually presented an ERC interview. And of course, there's a question: should you script your talk? Should you not script your talk? I scripted my talk, but I allowed myself at, let's say, a half a minute or a minute of time if I go off-road, but of course try to not to go too off-road during your presentation. And although it's very stressing and you're waiting for your interview, just do the mock interviews, but don't repeat it in front of your screen until you hate your presentation, because this is also not good. The day of the interview, you might be speaking like a machine. Now, in terms of the interview itself, for me, this interview was actually online. I don't know if this is going to be followed, but the interview was on the WebEx platform. So be acquainted with the platform, test it, and decide where and how you will present. So I've presented my interview as I'm presenting it now today. As you maybe will figure out, I am standing because I gesticulate really a lot as a person. And if I try to do it when I'm sitting, I'm really moving back and forth, and it makes you feel really vomity. So you have to try, you have to see yourself presenting and be at your most comfortable position while you're speaking. Then, of course, you have to try to speak up to be clear. You have to try to make pauses, like important pauses between I don't know, your work packages or your ideas. Don't be a machine gun. I know it's stressing, but you have to plan your presentation to really fit into the time so that you have time to breathe in, okay? And that you feel confident that you will fit into the time. And of course, in terms of questions, I think the most important thing is to continue to look at it in the same way as you looked at your presentation. You have to be able to time, because if the panel members are not able to ask a lot of questions because you continue on answering your question, you're never coming to an end, they will not be able to ask all of the questions that they have planned, and this will account as if you didn't answer these questions. So try to also train on answering questions in a short and clear manner. And then I hope that the success will be yours. So with this, I would like to thank my wonderful team, which has actually made the experiments that have secured my grant, and some of them are now employed and are working on the ERC project. And I would also like to specifically thank to my university for the help, to Wellbio and to the FNRS for funding the grants that have made me discover and secure my ERC grant. And with this,